So let's begin with understanding shape language. The fundamentals of character design can be summarized in 4 different parts: form, perspective, anatomy, and composition. Now, when it comes to character design, we should make sure not just to focus on what the character is, but on also what the design of our character is like. For example, if I will be painting or illustrating a cat, what kind of a cat is it? Is it a friendly cat? Is it an angry cat? Is it a happy cat? And if so, how can I depict that in my shape language? Now, I know it looks like I just drew in some random shapes, but what we have here, in fact, and obviously, is a circle, a square, and a triangle. Now, these are what I would call primary shapes. Round shapes and circles, ovals, anything with a lot of curves are what I would call our friendliest shape. They kind of evoke this emotion of happiness and something that isn't evil or threatening. There's no sharp edges on it or anything that can make us feel uneasy. Circles have this natural ability to look soft, right? They don't look like they might come out and attack you. And I know that sounds kind of vague when you explain it, but when you actually implement this in your character design, it can really start to make sense. Now I'm going to show you an example. This is one of my characters that I had designed called Moonface. Now, obviously, a lot of the inspiration is, of course, taken from his name, but I have also used the design element of the circle to really emphasize his friendliness. I'm just kind of putting the shape on top here to show you how I really made it a perfect circle in this case. I know it's a very obvious example, but of course, his name is Moonface, and he did have a round face, but he was also a very friendly character, and I really emphasized that even more when I did his eyes. I made them very wide, and again, I kind of reinforced that shape again in his pupils. And then, of course, I balanced the character out with a much thin, longer body so that he didn't look too kind of heavy and round, but you can also go that route as well. Now, the next shape that I want to focus on is the square. Now, squares are kind of the opposite of circles, right? They have a lot of angles to them and they're very symmetrical. These shapes tend to evoke the emotion of strength and stability, and kind of make you feel like or think of a rock or a mountain that looks very strong and steadfast. This shape is very much used when we design superheroes. I mean, think back to all the superhero movies that you've ever seen. The characters have very, straight, kind of symmetrical edges. Now, here's an example of a character that I had designed. Of course, the shape is inspired by the vegetable, the artichoke, but he is, again, kind of like a superhero. So I made sure to give him a very squarish type body, very angular on the top and, straight legs going down. And of course, he's a younger character and he's supposed to look slightly a little more afraid and doughy, which is why I made him slightly more rounded, but the essence of his shape evokes a square, evokes that rectangle, evokes that stability and strength that I wanted to get. Now let's discuss our final primary shape, the triangle. It doesn't exactly have to just be a triangle. It's essentially any shape with a lot of angles on it kind of evoke that feeling of of something that's evil or something that you have to be cautious of. These very angular and diagonal lines can really evoke the feeling of something that is sinister. And quite often we depict our villains and evil characters in the cartoons and the video games that we watch. They all tend to be a lot more angular. This shape really is good at communicating aggression and something that is not friendly, essentially. It's like the direct opposite of a circle, right? There's no round edges to it. It's very strong, straight, and dynamic. Oftentimes you will see a superhero next to its villain, and the superhero always has that square shape, and the villain tends to have a lot more angles. Now, here's an example I'm showing you of a character that I had designed inspired by the Russian folklore, the story of Baba Yaga. Now, she's a very evil kind of witch-like character. So, I really made it a point to emphasize her shape to look and have that kind of triangular, angular feel to it. Notice how I've also made it a point to make her fingers very pointy. I gave her a very pointy stick that she's holding. Her nose is very pointy as well. Even her eyes are very angular. And I tried to emphasize this shape as much as I could throughout my character. Now let's focus on the next part of the character design fundamentals, perspective. Now, perspective is adding dimension to our form, basically. It's adding depth to our circle so that it goes from being just a flat circle to being a sphere. Now I'm going to draw out an example for you. First, I'm going to start with just drawing a basic round flat circle. I'm just keeping it very loose. Now in the middle of my circle, I'm going to draw a line going across. It's not a perfect straight line, rather it goes in the same round curve as the edge next to it. Now I'm going to draw another circle over here as well. This is very similar to what a basketball or like a soccer ball would look like. Now I'm going to, with a red color, draw some lines going horizontally across my circle. For example, like if this was a face, that would be an indication for me on where my eyes would go. The more I keep adding in these lines, I kind of start creating planes along my circle, and it really adds depth to a very simple shape and gives it so much more emotion and feeling and layering. It's not just a very simplified object anymore. It can be and turn into much more. Perspective lines really help us break down our character so that we can have a very solidly constructed character. The form helps us understand the design, and the perspective helps us break down that design. Now, again, using my character Moonface, on a new layer, I'm going to just draw out some perspective lines to show you how I created my character and how I was able to give his shape or give his forms a lot more dimension. Now I'm just going to start drawing, the regular round shape around here. And as I did earlier, there is my line right there. That's where the eyes would have been drawn. That is kind of the round shape that I was able to give my character. And of course, if I keep drawing in, you're going to see that every part of him was some kind of a shape put together with a little bit more depth and dimension thanks to perspective. Even when we take a look at his arms, those are, two rectangles put in together. Right where the elbow meets would be the space where the next rectangle would start. And it really helps you break down your character. Now, perspective and anatomy kind of go hand in hand. This is because when you are dividing your character up into shapes, it really helps to understand what those shapes are, what that bone that you're drawing represents, where certain parts of the scalp are, where the ears will be situated, so that when you're actually doing your character design, it's very easy to be able to kind of go into your mental library, and as you're drawing, being able to figure out where everything goes and what exactly it looks like. Studying and doing anatomy is almost like a lifelong project, and I'm still learning. So do figure drawing as often as you can. Go for figure drawing sessions and really make it a point to study your anatomy. And now the final part of the character design fundamentals is composition. And now I'm going to use my artichoke soldier boy to kind of show you how I put him in a universe that would make sense to his character. Now, you don't always have to do this. As you noticed in my previous characters of Baba Yaga and Moonface, they were just on a plain white or dark background. It really depends on how you want to depict your character. Using composition, it really helps you understand the size of what your character might be. For example, I have this shadow of a monster kind of hovering over him to imply that maybe he might be small in stature. I also, tried to make the background as desaturated as I could to really push him forward into the foreground. This is something that you can develop over time. You can choose to use this or not, but it's really nice to help put your character in the universe, to understand where they're coming from, to kind of keep them within their elements, especially when you're putting it in your portfolio. It really could help your characters stand out. And that is it for understanding the character fundamentals and shape languages. And in the next video, I'm going to show you the process of creating silhouettes based on these character fundamentals that we just learned. These silhouettes are going to help evolve and create our character designs.